Did you know?
The last Salem Witch Trial took place in 1878. Most people think the Salem Witch Trials ended in 1693 after 19 women and 1 man were executed, but think again. Just because one kind of crazy gets shut down doesn't mean another one doesn't take its place. So it all started in May when a woman named Lucretia L.S. Brown decided to accuse a feller named Daniel H. Spofford of, quote, attempting to harm her through his mesmeric mental powers. That kind of sounds like he was trying to seduce her, but that's not the case. You see, both people were Christian Scientists, and that's where most of these shenanigans started. Christian Science was founded by a hot little minx named Mary Baker Eddy. She also wrote the Christian Science Monitor, Christian Science Sentinel, the Christian Science Journal, and, well, you get the picture. She was totes into Christ and loved to write about his club like nobody's business. Anyway, she had a fair number of followers in her church, as well as her superfans like Brown. Brown especially liked something Eddy had written about called malicious animal magnetism. It was a form of hypnosis that practitioners could use to harm other people unless you paid to attend one of Eddy's lectures to learn how to protect yourself against it. It would have been all fine if Lucretia didn't also have medical problems up her Victorian butthole. For starters, she suffered a childhood injury to her spine that left her disabled. Fortunately for her, she believed that Christian Science healed her all up nice and she got back on her feet. Unfortunately, she ended up suffering relapses in 1877 and 1878. While your average person might just take it all as it came and live with it, that's not how Lou Crizzle got down. She needed someone to blame, and she needed someone to blame hard. That's where Spofford came in. He'd been involved in the church for a long time and was even the publisher of many of Mary Baker Eddy's publications. In fact, he introduced her to a husband, so they was tight, yo. At least until they had a falling out. Eddy kicked Spofford out of her church and tried to sue him. So now Lucretia Brown had someone her hero hated, and she wasn't afraid to drag his name through the mud. Her lawsuit stated, quote, Daniel H. Spofford of Newburyport is a mesmerist and practices the art of mesmerism, and by his said art and the powers of his mind influences and controls the minds and bodies of other persons, and uses the said power and art for the purposes of injuring the persons and property and social relations of others, and does by said means to injure them. That case was heard in Salem and reported on in the Boston Globe, the Newburyport Herald, and the Salem Observer. Spofford's law feller filed what's called a demurrer, which is basically a fancy word for objection. He argued that the court had no jurisdiction in what was essentially a church matter and there was no way to resolve a case based on mesmerism. Then Lucretia Brown's attorney challenged the objection by claiming that mesmerism was a fact, and that was that. The court was all set for an all-out battle of mesmerism over body. Until it wasn't. Judge Horace Gray took one look at the suit and dismissed it. He ruled that the claim was vague and that it was, quote, framed without a knowledge of the law of equity, and that was that. It's not hard to see the parallels between the case and the whole spectral evidence thing of the witch trials. That's why it became known as the Salem Witchcraft Trial of 1878. Nice.